Today on Playbook, Kevin King has gotten a lot of bad press over his performance against the Bears. We're going to break it all down, though, and look at it from all angles, so let's get into it. Okay, so we're going to get into some split stats here in a minute, but first of all, I just want to kind of go back and get the view from 35,000 feet. Kevin King, of course, came under fire after his performance against Mitch Trubisky, giving up quite a few. He had 2 pass breakups, but I think he had 9 catches over him. We're going to talk about that, but first I want to, again, back up a little bit and talk about the guy himself. Keep in mind, this guy's a 6'3", 200-pound, 4'4" guy who is well above average, if not elite, in many athletic categories for a corner. He is practically carved out of cornerback stone and has not really performed up to that level, has not performed up to his athletic ability, I would say. And part of that, of course, is the fact that he has been oft injured. He's missed 4 games this year again, which is why for our split stats we'll only have 3 quarters of football to talk about. But this is a guy that every Packer fan should really want to turn out. However, I think down the road some of this may work against Kevin King. Last season he had 15 pass breakups and 5 interceptions. Jair Alexander at the end of the 2020 season had 13. So you've got, on the one hand, as Packer Nation, I think, believes, and I kind of tend to agree, well, I definitely tend to agree with, he's not worth top dollar cornerback money. There's no doubt about that. I'm very glad to have him on this defense. This defense is better with him than we would be with any other cornerback combination we have. However, moving forward is one thing. But then at this point, we are looking at finishing out and potentially getting a Super Bowl with Kevin King on this team. And I, for my money right now, am happy that we have him, because I would rather not have, Josh Jackson out there or Shannon Sullivan out there and Josh Jackson in the slot right now. That does not work for me. I don't know how it works for some people. I don't know if it works for some people. I actually have had people say that it's time to try Josh Jackson out at that position. I say nay, nay. So, with that said, this has been yet another injured year, and in some regards, not a good one. I do want to highlight something. A couple things, actually. Number one, this was Kevin King's career high in tackles. So, whatever we say about his tackling, and he did have some gaffes, he had at least one that I saw. He's a cornerback who throws his shoulder. Jair Alexander is a cornerback who throws his shoulder. Now, he finished out the 2020 season in a completely different way, but that's a different thing altogether with Jair Alexander stopping Jimmy Graham. That was fantastic. But cornerbacks are going to do that. What I love about Kevin King is his aggressiveness. He gets low, and I will exemplify the fact that he does form tackle on interior plays. So him pitching a shoulder at somebody from the outside, it can be a miss. I think we all remember the miss in the Chicago Bears game, but I think what many of us have forgotten is that when Shannon Sullivan took a bad angle on, it was Cordell Patterson after Montgomery went out, and basically gave up a first down, it was Kevin King who shed his blocker and made one of those exact same tackles and destroyed Cordell Patterson. So it's funny how we never realized that Shannon Sullivan basically is the responsible player on the play, and Kevin King saved a touchdown. But we do have to deal with in that you got to take the bad with the good. He's also going to throw a shoulder and miss from time to time. So, all right, let's quick talk about some of these statistics, and then I want to talk more, again, from a football philosophical standpoint, what the Bears were trying to do and why and how that affected Kevin King. So, as you can see here, we got Kevin King split stats for 2020. This breaks it down by quarter, and you can see the first quarter of the season, he had 15 tackles, none for loss. But his passer rating against was 114.3. That's really, really bad. 8 completions, on 13 attempts, so that's a 61.5% average against, 110 yards against, and a touchdown. That averages out to 8.5 yards per play. Second quarter of the season is, of course, lost due to injury, which is yet another reason that, I want Kevin King to win a Super Bowl. And I want Kevin King to get a lucrative contract. I don't believe it's going to be with the Green Bay Packers. Third quarter of the season, 12 total tackles, none for loss, of course. We'll go across. QB rating, 93.7, significant improvement there. 5 completions on 11 attempts. That's a 45.5% completion. And only 62 yards in those and a 5.6 yard average. So the third quarter of the season, he comes back. He's definitely better off. Now, keep in mind, he still had injuries during this time, and he has still been on the injury list. And so the fourth quarter of the season going in, he still is a little bit dinged up with a hamstring and I believe a thigh injury from time to time. It's very difficult to tell how much of a factor those injuries are for Kevin King, but I want to hearken everyone back to another star player on the potential star player on the Green Bay Packers that the Green Bay Packers had spent some draft capital on that got injured. And everyone in Packer Nation was ready to offload him, but his measurables were off the charts. The team believed in him, and the team was better when he was on the field. His name was Davante Adams. I don't think anybody's questioning whether we should have hung on to him as looking at his stats for 2020, his stats for his entire career, save that sophomore year when he was dinged up and he was unable to make the cuts that Davante Adams is known for making. Now, if you have an issue with your hamstring, Kevin King is basically the mirror image of a wide receiver. And this could be more of a factor than we know at this point. And the only reason I really bring it up is how important then is it that Kevin King's going to get a little extra time to rest up. Now, if we can point to the fourth quarter, 57 total tackles, including 10 by himself. And I mean, it's 7 solo, 3 assists, depends on how you figure it out. But a significant increase, and you've got a 99.0 passer rating against. That went up a little bit, but it's basically hovering around the same spot it would have been in quarter 3. So if he had played quarter 2, and let's say he was hovering around 95 or somewhere around there, we would be thinking, okay, this is right where his average is going to be at. That's fairly consistent. If he was at 89 in the second quarter, which I wouldn't expect, we would think, well, he's really going down. This is going downhill. But he started out at 114, and now he's got it down to 93.7. He's hovering right around that area, 99.0, which, again, that's a pretty high completion percentage. And it would be very interesting to go back and look at each of the quarterbacks he faced in that. I'm not going to do that. What I am going to do is talk specifically about the Chicago Bears game and how they played it and how the Green Bay Packers played him. 26 completions, 40 on 45 attempts. Completion percentage, 57.8, a little uptick there. But again, very similar. But this one, in this case, it's a little more similar to the first quarter as well. 367 yards, that's very concerning. And 2 touchdowns, that's even more concerning. His yards per average now at 8.2. That looks a lot more like the first part of the season. And I wish I could find a way to make that good, but it's just not. So we're looking at a guy, statistically, he's really not going to jump out of the page, but I think we can here's what I think is happening. I think Mike Pettin knows how to use Kevin King, an injured Kevin King who is available to play but is not 100%. And that is, he's not the super quickest guy out there. He's more a long speed guy. They have been playing him off. I'm going to talk about an example because I can't show it, of both the good and the bad and the ugly of playing off. Kevin King in the Chicago Bears game, he was oftentimes at like an 8-yard depth. We see it work for him at times. We see it work against him at times as well. But I want to switch this over to Mitch Trubisky's passing chart. Can't talk today. And then we're going to talk about what the Packers were up to, what the Bears were up to, and what kind of came clear for me watching the tape. So let's switch over and do that now. Okay, guys, now here is the passing chart for Mitch Trubisky in Week 17 against the Green Bay Packers. Obviously, this is exactly what we saw play out in the game. Mitch Trubisky throwing short and out almost exclusively. And then, of course, if you exclude incompletes, this entire triangle of the field is basically gone. You got one completion up top, but other than that, this to me screams Jair Alexander. That is completely devoid of anything, and that's Alexander being the eraser. But the Bears did move Robinson around and try to get him free on a couple occasions. They were never successful against Ja Money, but they were successful against Kevin King, and that's why part of the criticism of his gameplay came from. Again, he had a career high tackles in this game. I only saw him miss one, maybe two. But Mitch Trubisky in this is basically throwing everything inside of 10 yards. And this potentially there was the hope that they would be able to start moving into playing off these short passes into double moves. That was mentioned during the broadcast. But let's take a look at Mitch Trubisky's overall percentage for each of these zones. Now, just a caveat as I switch over, I could not, the NFL.com did not have up the grid exclusively for Week 17. So this is Mitch Trubisky's overall grid with superimposed on top of his Week 17 performance, where you can see, yeah, he had a lot of completions. Yeah, he has been having a lot of completions. Throw in a high school quarterback, he ought to have a lot of completions inside of 5 yards. I mean, barely over 5 yards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31. And one of them was three of them are incompletes. So, I mean, this is not stellar quarterback play. This is a guy who can be a game manager, but that's all he can be. Now, let's throw the percentages for these zones on the grid. And it looks familiar, doesn't it? Look at all the green. Above league average by a bunch in to the left, behind the line of scrimmage. Above league average in the middle, behind the line of scrimmage. Above league average. That's a tongue twister for me, apparently. Above league average, again to the right, behind the line of scrimmage. Up to 10 yards. Above league average to the right, above league average over the middle, above league average to the left. And then look what happens after that. And again, this does not include what Jair Alexander did to Mitch Trubisky in this game. So between 10 and 20 throwing to the left, a 56.5% there. The league average is 85.5. I won't even tell you what Aaron Rodgers' average is. Across the middle, from 10 to 20 yards, Mitch Trubisky at an 83.6%, league average is 90.2. And from 10 to 20, Mitch Trubisky is at an abysmal 40.7. The league average is 76.9. Now let's talk about going deep. I'll go back to the left side. Mitch Trubisky has a 32.0 average. The league average from 20 plus, so that's anything beyond 20, 75 over the middle. He's got an 81.9 average, which is still below average, but much closer. League average, 86.1. So he's almost average in that category. And then to the right long, he's a 35.7, and the league average there is a 78.3. I know, Aaron Rodgers is up in the ante on a lot of these numbers, but so it is clear that Matt Nagy going into this game, because again, I don't have Jair's numbers factored into this percentage right now. Matt Nagy knows what he can and can't do with Mitch Trubisky. If he is looking at any numbers of any kind, they are going to show, and they're going to show dramatically. So from an offensive standpoint for the Chicago Bears, they're doing everything they can, and obviously they want to get the run going as well. That would help potentially with some longer passes. But even then, with the percentages that he's throwing, look at the fourth down throw that he threw. I think it was over Shannon Sullivan. I don't care who it was over. It was out very quick. No one was going to catch up to the ball. It was well executed by the wide receiver. A fantastic catch, but that was a terrible, ugly, and barely accurate enough to be within the catch radius pass. This was pretty much the story of Mitch Trubisky in this game. He made a lot of completions, but he threw a lot of balls that did not look good at all. Now, it's forgivable and it's surmountable if you're inside your own 10-yard line. Once you get from 10 to 20 to 30, the 40s, that kind of inaccuracy is going to compound itself and it's going to end up in incompletions. And that's exactly what we got out of Mitch Trubisky. He did hit the one deep one down the middle. I need to remind you of that in his league average. He might hit league average down the middle for that one. He's at 81.9. League average is 86.1, so we'll see. It's just one pass. But the other side of this that I wanted to talk about, I'm going to go back to the other chart, is, when you have a quarterback throwing short, quick, high percentage passes, your cornerback on that side is going to really struggle to get passes broken up. And the most important thing is going to be for him to be a sure tackler and keep things from getting out of hand. To some extent, Kevin King really did that quite well. His average of 8.5, that's a little more than we'd like to see. But in this game, Kevin King was able to play what I think was Mike Pettine's scheme in this whole thing. It's like Jaira's going to take that side of the field away. We expect that they're going to go to Mooney, who is a really nice prospect. Kevin King, you're going to get thrown at a lot. Shannon Sullivan's going to get thrown at a lot. Of course, Adrian Amos is going to end up having to pick up some of those duties too. But where I think some people think he had an abysmal day, I think he had a high completion percentage day, but he didn't let anything crack loose. He didn't let anything get beyond him except maybe one play or two. And again, I think this was part of the scheme. I feel like Mike Pettine saw this coming too. It's like, listen, we'll let them get the underneath stuff. We're not going to let them run so that means that basically we're going to get manned up on the outside potentially in the perimeter. And if Trubisky gets the ball up fast, he's potentially going to make a lot of completions. But in the end, we're going to stop him because we'll be able to stop the run. Mitch Trubisky can't throw long. So when the broadcasting journalist talked about the double move is coming up, that's what they're setting up, the double move. I don't think Matt Nagy even has a double move in the playbook at this point in the season. That second graphic is Mitch Trubisky's percentages throughout the entire season. Or actually, up until minus week 17, which is, again, it's going to look the same in terms of the green. It's going to look potentially worse in terms of the red, the yellow, the intermediate and long, middle, right, or left. So let's talk about next some of the actual plays that happened in the game. On Playbook, I like to talk about specific plays. I'm not going to chart these out this time around. I'll probably just leave this graphic up, and then I want to talk through more than one. I want to talk through about three or four of these plays, and we'll kind of take out the top and the bottom in terms of his best play and his worst play, and then we'll just talk about how Kevin King is playing the cornerback role right now overall in the scheme that Mike Pettine has out there. And finally, guys, we will break down three of the plays that Kevin King was involved with that I think kind of strike about in the median of how he is playing right now. Obviously, every game plan, every opponent will be different. Some will be definitely better than Mitch Trubisky and the Chicago Bears offense. However, many of them will not be simply throwing quick passes out, high completion passes for your quarterback that make it very difficult for a cornerback to close who is playing off and making sure he keeps everything in front of him. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of drop out the worst and the best. I always remind people that there was a 2nd and 14 where Kevin King is playing 8 yards off. He's playing head up. I don't think there was any leverage in that. It was like a 0 head up on Mooney. There's 13 minutes and 13 seconds in the second quarter, and he comes straight up. It's a quick out pass. And Kevin King reads it, breaks on it, uses his speed, uses his length, and knocks the ball away. Okay, playing off and reading and then making a play that could have conceivably been an interception, and if it had been an interception, it likely would have been a pick six. So I'm going to throw that one out because everyone that I say that to will remind me, which is completely legitimate, of Kevin King coming flying in with a shoulder pad and making a miss on a tackle that then springs a guy free that should have been down, which is kind of what the story has been on Kevin King. Again, I will say cornerbacks typically use that shoulder throw from time to time, especially on the outside, and especially when they need to break up trips, quick outs, screen passes, and stuff like that. Jair uses it too. I mentioned earlier today, the reason Jair doesn't get called for it very much is because nobody's thrown to Jair's way anymore. But we did see the Dalvin Cook shoulder throw high on Dalvin Cook to Jair Alexander that was not successful either. So we're throwing those out. I just want to pick out a couple of plays that help me kind of frame what I think the long and short-term value of Kevin King is. And the first one, it's the first quarter, 1st and 10 on the 24-yard line. Oh, let me back up, actually. The first quarter still, but there's a 2nd and 1 where Kevin King is again playing off. The wide receiver drives him hard, and he turns and trails and is looking inside. I want to say it was an outside leverage. Doesn't really matter because the wide receiver breaks off the route, and I believe that was Mooney again, who King ended up on a lot. Breaks off the route quick, makes a quick out. King has to recover. Remember, he's a long, fast, long speed type of a guy. He has to break out. Quicks aren't necessarily his thing. He has to break down, cut to the outside, and Mitch Trubisky throws the pass wide, but if he had not, I think Kevin King would have been there either for a pass breakup or potentially another interception. But he closes back again to the sideline, and as the wide receiver goes up for the ball, he just buries his shoulder in him and throws him out of bounds, and that opponent was laying there for a long time. So I don't know. I don't know if King was credited with one of his 2 pass breakups with that play. I would suspect that's the case. He is certainly not credited with a tackle in that, but it certainly was one, just not in the field of play, so it doesn't come out that way. And that was a really good, I think, recovery play where Kevin King was playing. He's playing the tracks. He's playing the go route. He sees it broken off, and he reacts, and he gathered himself, and he made a play. Was it stellar? I mean, when I see Kevin King go out there and push somebody out of bounds so hard that they can't get up, yeah, I think that's a pretty damn good play. So I that play in particular caught my attention as I went through this tape, but that signified to me how he's playing in terms of aggressiveness. Now, that doesn't mean he's always right where he needs to be. I mean, he had to recover from playing the long ball. But when he arrived, he made it a point that he let the opponent know that he was there. And whether he gets any credit for the tackle, the pass breakup or not, he saved a play there. And the Chicago Bears had a good one on to drive him with his long speed, get him to flip, and then break it off. All right, secondly, this is the one, still the first quarter. This is a 1st and 10. And maybe this is the reason nobody's remembering anything of this about Kevin King, because I had to go back and look it up. On the 24-yard line, and this is the one I mentioned a little bit earlier. This is play action. The play action goes right, and then they run a sweep left with Cordarrelle Patterson because David Montgomery is out. You remember, he got hurt, went out early in this game, was able to return. The responsibility on this one then came down to Shannon Sullivan. And Shannon Sullivan, whether he misread it or just took a bad angle, Cordarrelle Patterson is very fast. He may have misjudged his speed. But Sullivan takes a bad angle and gets completely beat around the outside, allowing Cordarrelle Patterson to get the edge, turn the corner, and start streaking down the field. Now, well, I say start streaking down the field. If it were not for one Kevin King, who sheds Allen Robinson no less, throws his shoulder to the ankles of Cordarrelle Patterson, and saves a potential touchdown on that play. That's the play where Shannon Sullivan actually got hurt. He came in so late that I think he saved himself getting rolled up and potentially having a knee injury. And he ended up just getting clipped by King, who came flying in and absolutely drilled Patterson. So there's the kind of counterpoint to the shoulder throw that doesn't work. He has been making these things work. At least he did in that play. Now, I'm not going to sit and count each and every one because it's not going to go away. Jair Alexander's going to use that same move. So is Kevin King from time to time. But in this case, he's very violent to the ball. He's very aggressive. And he stands up and he's like, oh, no, you won't either. He's got a little attitude, too. Okay, the very next play from that one is a run play. This is 2nd and 4 now. And I don't have we could figure out what the field position is. That doesn't matter. Anyway, it's a run play. It's a run play off like the left C gap, and so that's Kevin King's on the right side. He uses really good eye discipline. He's paying attention. He's just reading his keys. He sees it's a run play. He immediately jumps in, gets in and I think it's Patterson. It may have been Montgomery at the time. No, it would still be Patterson. He plays with outside leverage. Obviously, the play is a plus in terms of a run, but this play was the one that should have been stopped by a linebacker. Kevin King pressed into service, comes up. He uses good eye discipline again, plays outside in, triggers real hard, and makes a tackle. In this case, I just want to put this out there, this was a wrap, lift, and drive form tackle by Kevin King. Now, you notice the difference. This was an inside play as opposed to an outside play where King feels like all he has to do is use his speed, get his shoulder into a guy, and take his feet out from under him. So those are a few plays that I thought were interesting in this one. Obviously, we could go through and highlight. We talked about the stats, and the stats don't look good. But again, we have to factor in the football situational football here. If you've got a quarterback that's throwing in, from 0.5 seconds to 0.75 seconds, I'd be very interested to put a stopwatch on Mitch Trubisky in this game and see what the longest snap to pass time he had was in this game. You're going to get completions. You're throwing high completion passes for the entire league. Mitch Trubisky, he's been really good at those. That's all, however, that he's been really good at. And that makes it a little tougher for Kevin King. But what you're looking for out of a cornerback in this situation is make tackles. You should probably have a lot of tackles in this game. He had a career high. Now, what that means to me is exactly this. I'm going to talk about the long-term Kevin King. I don't see being with the Green Bay Packers. I don't know that he's a guy that you're going to want to pay top cornerback dollars to, and I think Kevin King is going to command top cornerback dollars next year. So long-term, he may not be with us, but let me tell you this. I am very happy that in this potential Super Bowl run, this potential championship that we have Kevin King on the perimeter rather than Josh Jackson or Shandon Sullivan. Shandon Sullivan got beat his share of times in this, and he was not playing. Put him out on a perimeter against a solid number 2 wide receiver, the Green Bay Packers are going to seriously struggle. We know we would because we saw what happened when Kevin King was not able to be on the field. This Packers defense came back on and mounted a resurgence when Kevin King got back on the field. So Mike Pettin could lock down the perimeters and do a little bit more had a little bit more freedom to do what he wanted to do. Now, it certainly wasn't perfect. I'm certainly not saying King is. Like I said, we've got Jair Alexander who needs to get paid top dollar. I don't really think we're going to pay Kevin King necessarily, knowing that is going to have to happen. But in this playoff run, I think we should just look at him, and obviously there's going to be flaws, there's going to be problems, there's going to be mistakes, but he is making more mistake-free football than he was earlier, and we will need to watch to see what happens when he comes up against a better number 2, and when he comes up against a better quarterback that can then throw in the double moves, so that some of those mistakes come back. That's more of my concern than the way that he played against the Chicago Bears. All right, that is my take on that. King being one of those guys, you kind of either love him or you hate him, I think. I feel like I would be called a love him guy, but I'm really not that. There's stuff that needs to be cleaned up. But I'm hopeful that he can continue to improve, and I'm very happy that he can, for another week, continue to get healthy, which has been, and that's another reason I'm not sure the Packers want to bring him back. But again, if he can get healthy right now for a playoff run, he may be a very important part of the Packers winning their 14th championship. All right, guys, that will do it for me today. I appreciate you jumping on. Look forward to any of your comments wherever you are watching this. And we will continue to talk on my live feeds. I'm on live on Facebook, 1 o'clock Eastern, noon Central every day, basically. And then I have started an Instagram Live, Packer Nation Primetime at 6 o'clock Eastern, 5 o'clock Central. That is on Instagram. That is my IG handle is at the Green Bay Packer Nation. If you want to check me out there, I would look forward to seeing you and chatting about this situation. This Packers team with a lot in front of it gets a bye week this week, so we get a free win, and then we'll see who we have to play next. All right, you guys have a great one. We'll talk to you again soon. Go Pack.
Packer Nation Worldwide.